afternoon. This is March 15th, 2023. It's 5:03 p.m. This is the Finance Committee, and it's a joint meeting with the Select Board. Excuse me. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over Local Access Channel 18 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. I'm going to start with the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is the Nauset Regional School District budget. And I believe we have.
Yep. And I'm just going to call the select board.
You have
Yep.
to call the
board.
meeting.
So I am calling the Eastham Select Board to order. We have 4 of the 5 members present. Jerry just stepped out, but Jerry's also here, Suzanne, Amy, and myself. Okay. And we also have Jackie and Rich.
Hey, forget me.
Oh, you are here. Oh, I didn't realize you made it on Zoom. Oh, yay.
He was there.
Okay, everyone's here. Oh, you were at the other? Okay.
From the
Yep.
coast.
I saw that chair in the background and it just all clicked. Wish I was sitting in that chair. Okay.
Mary, just to summarize where we are, we've been reviewing the departmental budgets, and today is our last departmental budget meeting with the various educational departments. It was distributed to you just the other day and handed out, either picked up or handed out, was the full section for your budget books of the educational services section. This includes the Nauset Regional District various budgets, elementary school draft budget, and Cape Cod Tech budget. Each of them are here today. Ms. Orcott is on the screen for the tech when it's her turn. But I will summarize by saying, in typical fashion, we have our summarized in our appropriation summaries, what's going to town meeting, and education services at this point is about $135,000 more than what we had provided for or planned. So that'll be part of our contemplation when we wrap up our budget, have our budget wrap-up sessions in the next week or two, just see how it all fits together. But that's where we stand at the moment, and I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Great, thank you. First of all, I'm here with Chairman Chris Easley and our Vice Chairman Judith Schumacher. And Judy Schumacher is also the chair of the Budget and Finance Subcommittee. And so she's there, she knows the budget inside out as well as any of us do. And we also have on screen Giovanna Vendetti in the upper right-hand corner. And Arlene Consiglio is just beneath the tile underneath. And I know that she's going to put our presentation up there as we start to walk through it. I think we're going to start tonight with Chairman Easley has got something that he's going to say, and then I'm going to walk you through our presentation for the region. So we'll start with Chairman Easley.
Oh, thank you for having us this afternoon. The school committee, as an elected body, we represent the responsibility to the citizens of our towns to develop and present budgets that address the educational needs of our community's children. Over the years, and particularly as a result of the pandemic, the responsibilities of public education have grown to encompass more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. Education now looks at the whole individual, the student as a person. Public education is asked and attempts to develop each individual student into a happy, productive, well-educated citizen of our community. The deficits in learning and behavioral challenges brought on by the pandemic have made this job of developing well-adjusted students much harder to accomplish. Our youth, our students, are facing developmental problems in the areas of their behavior, their mental health, in addition to their learning loss. These challenges in and of themselves present a monumental task for our educational system to address and overcome. Some say it'll take 20, 30 years. Unfortunately, our educational system faces additional challenges. Those challenges are in leadership in the classroom as well as in administration of our schools. The pandemic wreaked havoc on the staff that run and maintain our schools. The teachers, support staff, administrators, and maintenance personnel were forced by the pandemic to adopt, on the fly, to an entirely different teaching model, a different school system. And on the whole, school systems in general who are ill-prepared for these changes in their teaching technique, environment, and school culture. It is from the mental health and behavioral issues, along with the conflicts so more prevalent in our society, that have negatively impacted the working environment in our schools. As a result, school employees everywhere have questioned their career choices and their desire to stay in a career in education. It needs to be noted that in the Nauset school system last year, between administration, elementary schools, and the region, there were over 70-plus employees that left. 70 employees retired or left the system, requiring us to hire new individuals to take those positions. I'm unaware of any year in which there was anywhere near that amount of turnover in staff in the Nauset system. So to be clear, education itself is in a crisis, as well as many of its students. These students are the children of our community. I'm not trying to be alarmist, but it's no secret in today's society. It's all over the news about the challenges that students face. And somehow we've come to accept it, and that in education we don't have that option. We've got to address it. It is how we respond to this crisis that will determine the quality of the culture and education in our communities for future years. In the budget presented, an attempt has been made to invest in people, programs, and in services that will impact the behavior, mental health, and learning loss of our students. To develop a budget in a year that has seen an 8% inflation rate is challenging. Add to that the double-digit % increases in fuel, energy, as well as large increases in services related to our special needs students, and the large increase in employee benefits, and it is a budgeting nightmare with hard choices. We have worked to make those hard choices in our schools, in our budgets, without damaging the services, programs, and staffing we believe necessary to help our children, our students, overcome these challenges that they face today. Some important points to note as Brooke goes through and reviews our budget request. This budget addresses some of our staffing challenges at the high school level and represents a reduction of 5 staff members. While our budget request is up 7.69%, the operating budget is up by 6.58%. The 1% difference here is because of a decrease in the percent increase in our income of only 3.13%. This income is the dollars we use to reduce the cost of the assessments to the towns for our budgets. We as well use money from our E&D and our revolving accounts to reduce the town's assessments. E&D is our free cash. In our current budget, $1 million has been applied to reduce the assessments to the towns. Bringing in budgets for the previous 10 years at a 2.5% increase, while our actual costs were more, has served to deplete our account balances in both E&D and the revolving accounts. They were drained to maintain this 2.5% increase over the years. The reduction in these accounts limits our ability now and in the future to reduce town assessments and will be a contributing factor in future budgets to come. One last point to note in our budget is student enrollment. Our enrollment at the high school is down. We're in somewhat of a perfect storm. We've got a new charter school that just went in, and in turn, the population leaving our district to it is going up. I'm sorry, we have a new tech school, pardon me. Also, in turn, with the construction project at the charter schools, that population has been going up also. Parents, I believe, not wanting the children to be in a school under construction, and taking the option of sending their children to charter schools. In turn, also school choice, the number of kids coming into our school from other towns has gone down as a result. Again, I'm fairly certain for the construction aspect of it, that, you know, the building in disarray as a result of a construction project. And with that, also school choice is going out. So we've got a bunch of big movement in our population, and the population is down. We believe this is a result of a high school construction project, and once completed, the students that left will return once more. And just so we have some reference on that, if you look at Cape Cod Tech, their population, their student population in 2019 was 571, 2020, 616, 2021, 626, 2022, 654, and this past year, this current year, 688. So when you look at that, they live in the same marketplace we live in, they draw from the same students we live in, yet since 2019, their population's gone up roughly 120 individuals. So it isn't necessarily just from our environment, there is that possibility of gaining those students back that have lost. So my only point to you is that it's important not to look at our student population and judge it at this time because we're in flux. And that flux will not be known what the outcome's going to be until the school construction is completed. So I want to thank you for your support of education that's so important to the families and children in our communities.
Thank you. I also want to acknowledge the fact that Maureen Noonan-Carey is here as well, and we thank her for her work and leadership with our committees. Today we're going to focus on the region. The elementary school budget is basically completed, but it has yet to be passed by their school committee. They'll be passing it, we anticipate, at their next meeting. The region is, certainly of the two budgets, the much more complex set of budgets to take a look at. And so I'm going to go through this rather quickly so that if you've got questions at the end, you feel comfortable in asking as many questions as you need to. We're going to start at the beginning, and Tom Fitzgibbons always says, with our regional committee, one of our committee members, that the numbers always tell a story. And so we thought this year we would start kind of with the story at the beginning and then say, now here are the numbers that represent that story. So that's why this is laid out in the format that it is. Arlene, if you can go to the next page, please. Thank you. We always do everything with a nautical theme, and so this year it was our staying on course. We started some good things last year. We wanted to continue them this year as we plan for our future. You see at the helm this year, pretty much everybody's the same as last year, which is really good. And then you see some things there for transitioning that we're still working on. The post-pandemic social emotional needs is a huge driver for us. COVID relief funding, that you're going to hear us refer to ESSER funds. That's what it is, funding that came through from the feds and our state level. We continue to maintain partnerships with municipal leaders and our safety partners. We did a huge stay in place today practice at the middle school that went very, very well, and that continues on in all of our buildings. The Nauset High School building project is JO and ITs. It's our other full-time job because it tends to take a lot of our time. Right now, we are in the middle of the Nauset Middle School principal search and the Director of Student Services search. We've got finalists that have been moved forward, and we'll be doing some final interviews both tomorrow and next week, and we'll have those roles buttoned up before the end of the month. As we turn over to the next slide, thank you. I just want to highlight a couple of things. I think sometimes people think that we are able to pull these budgets together quickly, and we can't. It just doesn't work like that. And as I said, the region is the most complicated, and one of the strengths that we have built into our infrastructure is that our current region school committee has its own separate budget and finance committee, and I had alluded to that earlier, that Judith Schumacher oversees. And they're the ones that sit down with us sometimes every other week and ask the hard questions and make sure that we're on top of things, and before the budget even finds its way out to the school committee as a total. We start before actually September and October. We start in late summer to plan for the next school year, but every month brings a new chapter. Again, I'm not going to read through all of these slides. I know that you can read, so you don't need me reading it all. Of course, the month of March, if you look at it simplistically, the month of January really is when we get the first number, the first go-round, and that's when we sent something out to our town administrators as well and said, for placeholder purposes, this is basically where we're starting at, this is where we're at. The elementary number is going to have changed marginally from where it's at, and the regional, different region budgets went up and down throughout the process. February is a month that we dig in deep with our teams, and by the way, each one of our budgets is team-led, and I'll touch base on that in a minute as well. So that's when everybody goes through it very, very thoroughly. We don't necessarily have all of our numbers. We took a look today, Arlen and I, and the last of our numbers to come in to plug into our budgets came in on February 23rd. So, you know, you get certain numbers in, we get certain numbers in, and that was the last of our numbers that came in for us to plug in, was February 23rd of this year. We're going to go to the next slide, please. There are a couple of key areas of focus for us and needs, and I think Chair Exley did a great job again today of kind of laying out the broader context. So when we take a look at the focus and needs of our district, right across NPS, but certainly our focus today is on the region, both general student services and SPED services were up in terms of needs, and again, concerns post-COVID. We've seen a dramatic uptick in increased student anxiety, depression, stress, general and mental health issues, concerns, and issues. Another key area that we're seeing challenges is, of course, student behavior, particularly at the middle school and the high school. Learning loss, we're continuing to rebuild on what happened during the learning loss of the COVID, but that has not, we have not found our way to the plateau that we'd like to be at just yet. And then an increase in issues regarding student self-regulation. We see that, I would say, pretty regularly, and again, more at the middle school than the high school, but we certainly see it quite a bit at the middle school. We've obviously taken action already, and this budget presents ongoing activity. We've made appropriate staffing adjustments where we felt we needed to. For example, we added an adjustment counselor at NRHS that we felt was desperately needed, and we added an assistant principal at NRMS because we felt that there was a definite need there. Last year at one point in time, referrals for discipline, they were behind by 65. Now that's like in the old days, maybe the 40s and 50s, when mom would say, you know, to the child, when dad gets home tonight, well, that would be kind of when dad gets home in, I don't know, 4 weeks' time. That's really when you're behind 65 referrals. That's a lot of referrals to be behind, to not deal quickly with student inappropriate behaviors or activities or whatever. So we found that certainly bringing the additional assistant principal in this year made a huge difference in that area, and things are getting done in a much more timely fashion. We also introduced last year the notion of MTSS, a multi-tiered system of support, and PBIS. It basically dovetails together, positive behavioral intervention system. And all of this has more of a focus on what we refer to as restorative justice. So again, in the olden days we would have done a lot more suspensions or expulsions. That's really not our focus now. It's more on teaching moments along the way and keeping our kids engaged in the buildings rather than an automatic suspension. That doesn't mean suspensions still don't happen, they do, but probably not with as much commonplace activity as they did years ago. We also entered into a couple of very, very effective contracts, one with Gosnell, one with Care Solace, and this was to help our students and families alike that were experiencing additional medical, medical needs in terms of substance abuse or mental health issues, etc. So that we keep track of how many folks take advantage of those, and we realized at the end of this year that that was something that we needed to continue to move forward with ongoing efforts. The next one is talking about BCBA's Board Certified Behavior Analysts. I said earlier that that's one of the areas that we're still struggling with at the middle school, and so we see much more activity with BCBA's right now. We've also increased our staff professional development along the lines of all of this kind of work, and so that our teachers have the skill sets that they need as well. If you can imagine like a bag of tricks that you can draw from, depending on what our teachers are faced with. And a lot of things we were able to address through ESSER funds. I talked earlier about some of the funds that came through post-COVID, well actually during COVID as well. We had an ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and those are kind of all wrapping up in the next year or so. We also put into play a number of student screening tools, and those are things that kind of give us a quick assessment on where students are at, if they're having issues or whatnot. So you would hear us refer to student screeners like DESA or iReady as we go along in our meetings. And there, of course, there are price tags attached to all of that. When we turn to the next slide, we look at transportation. I'm sure you've heard this a million times over. Transportation continues to be a concern for us. We have such a problem getting bus drivers. We just do. And, you know, nothing sets our office on fire more than when we get the phone call saying, can you call parents to come and get their kids after school? Oh my goodness, you know, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of children that might not have a way home today. And then we just go into full mode to try to reroute and reorganize. It's just, it's a regular ongoing issue for us. We just have fewer people interested in becoming bus drivers. We had to increase costs, of course, during this current year that we're in right now. So when you look at the transportation costs going into next budget year really reflect this year's increase as well as what we're projecting for next year because it came in after the budget. So that's why when you look at transportation, it looks a little higher. That's why it looks higher. Of course, we've all taken additional action in terms of postings or advertisings or the collaborative, working with the collaborative to do whatever they can. There was an increase in pay, there were signing bonuses that were established. And one of the things that we don't even have enough bus drivers right now to do some of our out-of-district transportation. And so some parents now are actually driving their children to out-of-district placements. Those are the placements for high needs children where, you know, we're not able to help them necessarily within our system. So they have to go out. Sometimes it's off the Cape, and so we're having to reimburse those parents for the mileage because that's our legal responsibility. To the next page, please. Thank you. We talked, Chair Easley and I had talked about the notion of do we put technology on here or not. It's not really a driver, but I think that after a lot of discussion we decided to put it in here because it's something that necessarily hasn't been focused on as a need in the district previously, and certainly as a result of COVID, when you think about hybrid classrooms and teachers having to learn how to do this quickly and making sure that we had enough devices in the hands of kids and all that kind of thing that happened during that, it seems that we needed to come up with a strategic plan because what was happening in all of our buildings, not just the region, but if a principal could set aside 10 or 15,000 here or 20,000 there, and then they were going out and just making those purchases, but there was no through line. Mm-hmm. And so our IT department had licenses coming from here or there and all kinds of different devices, and there was no through line. And so this year we said, you know what, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna organize this. We're gonna get an evergreen plan in place so that we know that what we're doing is sustainable. So we did a reshuffling of staff. We've been getting rid of the antiquated, insufficient, poor infrastructure. Just the non-working stuff is gone. We've been bringing in additional, and again, a lot of that was as a result of ESSER funds, again, the COVID funds that were available to us. The other thing I want to mention too about ESSER funds, those were really specific. You had to apply for very specific things. If you were granted the money, then you could go off and buy those things, and then you've got the auditors coming in the back door to make sure you bought exactly what you said you were going to buy. So it wasn't like you could take it and plug a hole somewhere else. ESSER funds had to be used very specifically, very strategically with the approval of the state. And so that's how they worked. So we could put an evergreen plan in place, and that helps us for even our planning, our budget planning as we move forward and make sure that we're consistent with what we're doing. The infrastructure's hardware and software have been upgraded now, and the NPS IT staff is being restructured. We went out when we had the ability to go out and look for a different IT specialist, a leader, if you will, a director. We couldn't find who we were looking for. We did a number of different searches, and we just couldn't find what we were looking for. And we sat down one day and we said, you know, we've got the talent in NPS. That's what we should be doing, pulling the talent right from within our ranks. They know our system, they know our software and hardware, they know our infrastructure. And so that's what we did, is we pulled 3 people in that were already employees of the district and set up a triumvirate, if you will, of leadership. And they have, exceeded any expectation we've had. We also took a look at all software licenses, and if they weren't being used, we took a look at usage. If they weren't being used properly, we got rid of them and we shut them down, and so we were able to save some good monies in that particular line as well. The next slide looks at just some general information, and this is just a couple of quick things to say, and I know that Chair Easley had mentioned briefly the declining enrollments. We acknowledge that there's some declining enrollments across NPS. In some buildings, it's only 1 or 2 children, in other buildings, it's more. When we took a look at this particular budget year, where there was a natural chance to take advantage of natural attrition, and that being the fact that somebody's retired or resigned or moved along and left a position, we always asked, is that a position we need to backfill? Because if it isn't, then we're going to do something different here. And so right now, when you take a look, that's why the number is sitting what it's at for the percentage increase at the high school. It's because we are planning right now on at least 5 positions being cut, as Chair Easley had mentioned previously. So if we were able to do that and not affect our programming, then that's what we did. The middle and high school are currently examining programs and enrollments to consider continuance of specific programs. So for example, if we've got a program that's running with only 6 children in it, as an example at the high school, then that's probably not a program that we should continue. And so we are making some very hard decisions right now, and that doesn't make everybody happy, but I think it's an imperative as we take a look at from a fiscal perspective. Our benefits continue to come in above 2.5%. You know, we of course sought guidance from our wonderful TA and TMs across the district, and I do want to give a shout out. We love working with your TA, and we really appreciate everything that Jackie brings to the table. She has just been simply amazing, and she is one of the people that I can call and say, I just need a sounding board, help me work this through, and she is always there at the other end of the phone for me, and I'm just so appreciative of that. So we went out to the TATMs in December and said, what's the number that you're looking at for us to try to come in at? And at that point in time, of course, the number was 3 or 3.5%. See if you could try to come in around that number. And so that was our goal, was to try to work at that as best we could. We didn't get there in every position, but we got there in a couple of places. Our special education costs have risen dramatically, far beyond the 2.5 or 3 or 3.5%. The collaborative costs, for example, for our students that are attending the collaborative, those are all at 7%. And the state allowed out-of-district facilities for private facilities to raise their costs, which they pretty much all did, to 14%. So when you're dealing with percentage increases like that, to try to stay in at a 2.5 or 3 or 3.5 is basically an impossible task. Sped transportation costs have also risen dramatically, and so that also was a layer for us that we had to consider. Contractual obligations continue to exceed 2.5%. That's primarily more at your teacher matrix level. If you've got people that are outside of that, like administrators or some such, those positions are generally at the 2.5, but teachers that are still inside of the matrix are at a higher level than the 2.5%. So that means that you automatically start your next budget year in a bit of a deficit. Utilities were increased significantly, and this is just what we know from watching this year. And so our key utilities, we did double those in anticipation that that's probably exactly where we're going to be. Revenue resources, and again, Chair Easley alluded to this earlier, previously available to provide offsets have been depleted in the last 10 to 15 years. So there is no pot that you can go to of a revolving account or what have you to bring something in to help offset your number. Those have been depleted, which is why you were able to get in part to your 2.5 in previous years. Staffing challenges continue across NPS. I think sometimes, and I know we were asked a question last night, well, if somebody leaves, you have to hire for that position, are you able to get them at a cheaper rate, so to speak? And the answer is sometimes yes, but sometimes no, because we are quite frankly having problems trying, as is everyone across the Cape and even across the Commonwealth, but certainly on the Cape, we're not getting a lot of people applying for our positions. We're just not. And it doesn't matter whether it's a teaching position, an admin position, custodians. I can't tell you the number of people who have started to work for us in the last year and a half since I've been here, and who have left after maybe 3 months and said, I can't afford to live here. We've had a lot of that. So staffing challenges just continue to be an issue for us. And so it doesn't mean that we're able to, when we see a number of people retire, that we are going to have an automatic, windfall, if you will, between the outgoing cost and the incoming. These challenges, this is a bit of a disclaimer, this last number 10, these challenges were witnessed last year, we see them happening this year. I don't know whether they're going to be beyond or not, but they could potentially be. So I'm going to go to the next page, and thank you, Arlene, for being right with me. And I'm not sure if you want to say anything on this page. Gio, I know that you're out there, if you want to just make any quick comments on the budget cost drivers and budget increases.
Certainly. Like the superintendent said, these cost drivers were cost drivers in last year's budget, in this year's expenditures, as well as fiscal 24. Transportation increases in district, out of district, school choice tuition, charter tuitions, students leaving the district to attend charter and school choice, the transportation, special education students, the tuitions in the out of district and the collaborative, the Barnstable County retirement, Medicare, unemployment, the share of the employer's health insurance for continuing staff, as well as the retirees, the increase in the retirees is due to an increase in the number of retirees that we currently have. And then, of course, the building's contents, liability insurances are also a factor in the fiscal 24 budget.
Great, thank you. Arlene, if you can go to the next page, please. This is just a bit of a review of the income, and it's exactly as Chair Easley said. If you take a look at that bottom right-hand corner, you can see that the average income up for us this year was 3.13, and that certainly isn't nearly enough for us to function on. And you can see the Chapter 70, which is the state, the charter school aid, state transportation, province, town, and Truro tuition, the curriculum piece and technology, and of course the transfer from E&D at $1 million. And I just want to point out too, last year we were very planful and strategic, and we were able to, as a result of part of our ESSER funds, do some housekeeping in-house to make sure that we could backfill the $1 million that we had taken out the year before, and say, okay, can we replenish this $1 million? And so we did everything in our power during that last school year to do that. We were able to, and so now we've got that $1 million that we've pulled out again this year, but we don't have the capacity this year to replenish that $1 million again, and that's of concern, because it means, of course, the obvious, it's not sustainable. Moving on, Arlene, please. I mentioned that the region budget is more complicated of any of our budgets. The elementary, of course, is the elementary budgets are our easiest. That's not the right page, Arlene. If you can just move forward, please. I don't have my glasses on, but yes, that's it.
There you
Thank you. So there are really 4 individual, completely different budgets that feed the region. The high school has its own budget, the middle school has its own budget, and there are teams of people that work with each one of these. None of these budgets are pulled together in isolation. So for example, the obvious with the high school and the middle school, you've got, the key players. The high school would be your department chairs, your principal, etc., working together and then working with us. Gio's office, basically, for both the middle and high school, sends out templates that have some pre-populated areas in them, and then they have to go after that from there. Pat Clark, I think, did an amazing job this year as he looked, and wherever through natural attrition he could make a cut, he did, and that's why you've got that 1.8% happening there at the high school. The middle school did not see nearly that amount of movement, and so the middle school is why you see that at 5.69. The region only, and Gio, I'm going to have you speak to the region only, but let me, if I can tee that up. The region only is really the one budget that is shared by the region only, and it has the region only benefits in it, transportation. So it's really a budget that we don't have much control over. So Gio, can you just pick up where I've teed off, please, on the region only?
Certainly. The region only, we see an increase of almost $1.5 million, or almost a 13% increase. What Superintendent indicated, these are the items that are beyond our purview. This information comes from our outside partners and vendors, whereby we have to include those numbers in our budget, and we really don't have an opportunity or are able to make changes from those amounts. And the cost drivers, we went over those earlier, those impact, and previously we were able to offset more of the region-only expenses by utilization of revolving funds. Those revolving funds have dried up. We've used international students, we've used school choice, we've also used other revenue from vending. We do the Firebirds, as well as catering and building use funds as well. Those building use funds are no longer due to COVID. The buildings were shuttered and we weren't renting out the facilities. But the pool of funds that we had over the last 5 years that we were able to pull from balances to reduce these costs has dwindled. So therefore you see the increase in that line item. The central office budget, that came in at 3.25%. Those are all the costs that shared out to the elementary school and the region's portion of the central office expenses. So the total expenses of $36,256,625, which represents an increase of $2,239,474, or an increase of 6.58%.
Great, thanks, Gio. The other thing that I want to make sure that's clear too is, the school committee, school committees have three key roles, right? Hire, fire the superintendent, policy, and budget review. And I think that your school committees have done an outstanding job at all levels, because of course we've got the 5 individual school committees that have worked really, really diligently at overseeing their budgets, because it is one of their key roles. But the region has that additional layer of that budget and finance committee. And so when they have their meetings, of course, they're open public meetings. And so we've had a number of other FinCom members drop in, or Board of Selectmen members drop into those meetings as well. And I think that's been very helpful as they've gone through their budget process, particularly through the months of January and February. And they look very closely, of course, under their purview is the Nauset High School, the Nauset Middle, and the region only. The central office has its own team of individuals who oversee it and the building of that particular budget. And that particular team is led by Gail Briere, who also serves as the chairperson of Orleans. And there are representatives from every committee that also sit on that particular team. So you've got fairly substantial teams that have walked through every step of the way of each of these 4 budgets. So with that, I'm going to ask to go to the last slide there, Arlene, please. Thank you for being right with me, Arlene. So the net operating budget increase, I'm not sure, Gio, do you want to just quickly go through that, please?
Certainly. The FY24 proposed budget is $36,256,625. From that, we use some revenue sources of $8,492,631, for a total operating budget of $27,763,994, representing a 7.69% increase. The debt, which includes the high school project as well as prior debt of $4,561,694. The capital plan projects, which is an annual allotment to maintain our buildings, $587,622 for a total assessment of $32,913,310, which is allocated to each of our 4-member towns based on the October 1st enrollment numbers, and the percentage is based on the number of students within the district.
Great, thanks, Jill. And the other thing I mentioned too, again, we want to give a shout out to our town administrators and town managers who help us align the debt number that's there. We work very closely with our town administrators and, and of course their seconds are in those meetings as well, very, very often. And we have from my lens, very good, very frank, very honest conversations. And this particular number also has been in partnership with working with them, the 4.5 million. So that's a broad stroke overview of where we're at right now in terms of the region. The region budget has been passed. The elementary school budget has yet to be passed, but as I said earlier, we expect that to be passed next week. So that's where we sit this afternoon. So happy to answer any questions that you may have or any thoughts that you may have.
I've got a couple for context. First of all, thank you for being here. 70 employees left out of how many?
I'm sorry, out of how many did you say?
Yeah, how many?
Gio, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 500 and change. I think, I want to say around that 535 mark, somewhere around there. So yes, it was a high turnover last year?
Okay, and if I understood correct, 65 of those 70 positions were filled?
No, last year it was all 70 of those positions were filled. The position turnovers, it was the full 70 turnover. It's as we move into this current year that we are starting to make these cuts along the way. And I don't necessarily like the term right sizing, but I think that there's a sense that there needs to be some right sizing that has to be done in terms of building size, students enrolled, and staff. There also needs to be a bit of a readjustment, particularly at the high school, because the high school level right now, if you had a pie graph, you would see that 90% of that pie graph, in fact I think it's 91, is to staffing, and only 9 or 10% is to resources, and that's not a good balance. It should be more to that 70-30 or 75-25. So over the course of the next couple of years, you're going to see us try to get that also right-sized.
And just, I have one more question.
Of course.
You mentioned, both of you mentioned a couple of times enrollment is down. By how much?
I don't know that I have, oh, you do have some specifics. Okay. Chair usually came prepared. I did not come prepared for that question.
So in the whole system, we're down 100
Out
in
of,
the whole system. So elementary, that includes elementaries as well as the region. In the region, we are down 42.
okay, but 100 out of X and 42 out of Y.
I'm sorry, just year to year. So this is year on year.
No, I think he's looking at the totals.
A percentage.
I'm sorry, I don't have percentages. Grand total is 2,200 in 2022, so and that was down 100 from 2021.
So 4 or 5%. Thanks.
So,
Other questions?
Are there any other questions? Roy has a question. Roy?
Yes. First, I want to compliment you and your staff in terms of how you adjusted to the implications of the pandemic.
Thank
A
you.
specific question is, how did you bring your faculty along in learning how to teach online and keeping students involved in that process?
I would say that that's still ongoing work for us. I think that out of all things negative come positives, really. And I think that during COVID, we saw some of our darkest days ever in education.
Right.
But I also think that there was this almost organic force to move us forward in terms of technology that I don't think we would have ever experienced in any other way. And then it also puts a mirror in front of you to say, what have we got and what don't we have? And I think that was, good or bad, kind of stops you in your tracks and say, we better take stock of what we have. And so that, we started to do that last year. We took stock of absolutely every device we had, every piece of hardware, software, the infrastructure. We really looked hard at all of it to start to map a plan. Then the other piece of that is that as staff became more acclimated to certain licenses or certain programmings that they were using, they didn't want to give it up when they got back into full-fledged in-classroom teaching. So for example, when the modular project came along, and I know we haven't really spent much time, if you have not seen that modular project at the high school, you really need to stop by or call us, happy to take you through for a tour. But one of the first things that we knew we had to do is make sure that it was technologically prepared for when our students and staff moved in. And so we again used ESSER funds, the COVID funds to get everything lined up, and we kind of started to, I wouldn't say hoard it, but that in a way we did, and got everything ready so that as soon as the modulars were ready, our I-team moved in on force and made sure those modulars were ready so that teachers, the first day they went in, everything was there for them and ready to go. So I think it's also important that teachers have what they need to be successful in the classroom, and one of those things right now during this era is the proper technology.
Thank you. May I ask a second question?
Sure. You have permission.
Thank you. How is restorative justice working out in terms of with student behavior and discipline?
Can you define it again, too?
Sure. So there's a whole philosophy around restorative justice, but in essence, I think, for example, you know, I would look at my first year, which was just last year, of course, and the number of suspensions that would cross my desk from, and I'm going to say the middle school as an example, because that's really where the bulk of the suspensions came. And I remember going and sitting down with the high school, or the middle school principal at the time and saying, this process is not working. Because I could see the same names coming up over and over and over again. So suspensions as a tool for some of those children were not working, so we had to look differently. What is going to work for these particular children? And so that's when we also took a look, and I did sit down with Chris and Judy and said, you know, I want to take a look at implementing a larger plan. And one of those, the two plans that we looked at that I know to be successful is the MTSS, the multi-tiered system of support, which ties in with your academics as well as the behavioral component, and the PBIS system, which I also know to be, from experience, to be successful. So we did, again, through ESSER funds, the COVID funds, we hired somebody in to help lead our MTSS at that middle school. And I would tell you that there's a dramatic difference this year in terms of keeping children in the building, but different means are being used when they're misbehaving. And sometimes it's as simple as sitting with the principal at lunch, or doing, I mean, it's all kinds of different things, but it offers a large menu, and it isn't the quick go-to suspend and you're out. You know, it's much, a little bit more thoughtful, shall we say.
Thank you.
I have a question about school choice. And I understand based on the information here that obviously you're anticipating losing people from school choice at the high school because of the construction. But it seems to me that you're also saying that you've lost quite a few people at the middle school.
That's correct.
And so that surprises me. I can understand losing people at the high school, but there's nothing really going on at the middle school like the high school. So
Yeah, yes and no. And so you would think that, like your automatic reaction would be, but that's not where the construction's happening. The construction's happening over at this building. But what we're seeing is parents are looking at that as a continuum of middle school, high school, and say, where do I want my child for the next, you know, however many years they're going to, you know, the 3 years of the middle and the 4 years of high school, where am I going to place them? So what we were finding is that they were pulling students out during the middle school as well, not just the high school.
So I did see in the paper, in the legal notices, that the school committees are going to be holding public hearings via Zoom on school choice, and different committees, schools are having school choice.
That's a regular, that's something that by law has to happen every year, and that's why the legal hearing has been posted. That, you have to take that vote every year as to whether you're going to continue with school choice or not.
Oh, so it's just a vote on to whether you're going to
That's all it is.
accept the process.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. And I have another question. You talked about the learning loss, and I understand that that's happened everywhere. Some schools have had summer programs to make up for what the loss was. Have you ever had summer programs
Yes.
at the high school?
We did, we had some in place this last summer, and we're planning on having some in place for this summer, this upcoming summer as well, yes.
So that's additional cost you're paying for the teachers to...
There, actually, part of that was paid for through some grant structure, quite frankly. It wasn't through necessarily appropriation money. Some of it was more through the grant structures we were able to tap into.
Has that been well attended when you had them?
I would say yes. I would say last year was well attended. We anticipate this year will be well attended too.
It gets challenging to get students to give up their summertime to go to school, so there was a balance, but I mean, they're more excited about the STEM programs and things like that went on, so when they could go in and learn with other kids, they were energized about that, so.
Yeah, that program was particularly successful.
Derek.
Rick?
How many months were the regional schools shut down? How long?
During COVID, is that what you're asking? I don't know if I can answer that.
Like March to September, we put off a week in September, so that was the time frame. Now
So that wasn't as bad as it could have been by a lot.
Right.
Right, oh, correct, yes. I mean, kids in Worcester were out a year and plus.
Okay, I was just curious. The debt number here, was that impacted by the bigger project dollars, the higher interest, or is that impact going to come beyond 24?
So Gio, I'm going to have you weigh in, but let me start and then you can finish. So this is the kind of your first blush of the debt that's to come. It will be a different number that you'd be looking at next year, and that's as a result of us sitting down with our town administrative teams and laying it out as they felt could best be laid out. So this number would be a different number for you next year than this year.
Right. But
It's the first
what I'm
piece.
curious, has this number been impacted by the actual construction number went way up and the interest rates on it were way up?
Yes.
Is there some impact in this number, or is all that impact to come?
No, there's some of that impact that's in here as well. Would that be fair to say? I look at Rich and
Yeah,
Jackie and Gio.
I can speak to it, but maybe Giovanna will go, you'll go first.
No,
Gio,
she'd
you want to
rather
go
have you
first, and
speak to
then
it, Rich.
Rich or Jackie can weigh in.
I'll go first. So we met with the town administrators and the town managers, and we met with our financial advisor, Lynn Welch, to look to see when the best time would be to bond the project. When we did the first go-around, the numbers were a sight to behold. So we went back to the table and looked at different options. So this option that we decided on, we won't be bonding in June as we had originally thought we were going to. We're going to borrow bond anticipation notes in June, and that will come before the school committee at that time, and borrow about $90.8 million. So what you're seeing in the debt portion of the budget is we have to do a couple of things. First, we have to pay the interest on the feasibility study. We also have to pay a principal pay down on that feasibility study. There is bond anticipation note on the interest on the construction piece, that bands that we took out recently, and then there's also a principal pay down on those bands that's required. We looked at the construction interest on bond anticipation notes, and that came in at about $3.4 million, and then the interest on the feasibility study bond anticipation note, and those numbers are projected at 4.5% interest. So when you take all this together, it's totaling about $4.3 million. And then we also had prior debt that we have on the books that we have to pay down principal and interest. Those projects were the windows and roofs at the high school and the roof at the middle school. So that totals, $232,313. So those numbers in total come up to the 4.56 million of debt on the operating budget for next year. And like the superintendent said, when we go out and actually purchase the bond anticipation notes in June, the interest rate that we have here is a conservative rate of 4.5%. That is subject to change based upon the market at that time. But that's what we had decided when we met together. Rich, did you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it all. But the summary of all that is the bond anticipation note that requires a principal payment next year in fiscal '24 and an interest payment on the old ban, a interest payment on a new ban, and that's basically adds up to the $4.5 million, and that's substantially borrowing most of the project costs. So there'll be an amount to borrow at the end, at tail end. And correct me if I'm wrong, G, the big number, but that's only a fraction of the cost being recognized in this FY24. FY25 there might be a little tail to it, but substantially, that's when most of it all will be hitting is in FY25 to the tune of, depending on the rate, probably somewhere between $7.5 to $8 million for not to Eastham in total.
Rich, one question is the debt, part of the debt exclusion. I mean, we voted 2 votes on the school project, those were debt exclusion. So is this debt part of, covered by the is it beyond the 2.5%
Yes.
already? I mean,
So it
can you
doesn't-
explain that a little bit?
So, and we have a couple new finance committee members too, so as you've probably heard, we're limited to Proposition 2.5. We can only raise so much in our tax levy, and if you go above that amount that's provided for, you need what's called an override. But there are exclusions to that, and these bonds are excluded. They were voted by our taxpayers at an election to allow these amounts to be funded outside of the limits of the Proposition 2.5 levy calculation. So this $4.5 million, all the debt we have with the district is excluded debt. So it does not impact our budget as far as our ability to use our Proposition 2.5 funds for our budget. It doesn't impact our override needs or not. Obviously, it does impact the overall tax burden going to a taxpayer, though.
Other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I was gonna let, Okay.
I'm going to ask Tom, and then I'll go to you.
Just a couple quick. You said that you lost 70 employees last year, correct? But you filled all those
Right,
positions.
we hired those.
So that's fantastic. I mean, given what the other departments have said when they've come in here, the struggles they've had, what was the key to your success in doing that? Because you said you were worried about attracting even applicants for the
Right.
position you're posting now. So can you help me understand what you did?
I have just so I asked that question too entirely, it blew my mind. We lost 70, we were able to hire 70, and it was like summer quality. I mean, we were very happy with the class that came in. So I don't know what was going on, if it was a perfect storm in education, or that we had I think there is people desire to work for NAWCET. I don't know if that was why, what generated it. I did ask, we need to thank Joanna Hughes, who was the human resources person who did all that work. I mean, she attracted, got the advertisement, and got it all going. But I have not found an answer that was satisfactory to it, and I couldn't quite comprehend it, to be honest with you.
So we'd love to know what you did, because maybe there's some learning for other
Well, we also,
departments.
to be honest with you, we have also used recruiters on occasion as a means to help get us, especially for the really tough jobs to fill, the more specialized or the administrative positions or whatever. We have used recruiters to help us along the way every now and again. Not for everything, but a couple of those key positions we certainly have.
Well, I know this is not just Eastham, you know what I mean? Everybody's struggling with hiring. You've done a fabulous job here.
Yes, thank you.
It would be great to know where else, because so obviously you're attracting talent, you're not hiring all that local, so there are people moving in from outside the area, so the Cape Cod is still attractive.
Oh,
You know
yes.
what I mean? So that's also contrary to what we're hearing, you know? The other thing is, with your leadership, it seems like you only lost 2 people in your leadership last year. You said you were gonna fill those positions. Do I have that right?
The positions, well, so we have, we had the middle school positions that last year, we did a full sales search last year, last summer.
Late getting in.
We were late getting in, but the candidates that were moved forward, I didn't feel comfortable that they were the right candidates for what we were looking for. And so the truth is, and I've been very open about this, 2 weeks before we opened school, I still didn't have any administrator for that middle school. And you want to talk about high stress, because I didn't want to put a warm body in there. There were lots of warm bodies, but I needed the right person. So those 3 positions that we've got there right now, we're all on a 1-year only contract. So those positions are all being hired right now. Actually, as we sit here, finalists have been forwarded to us. So there's that little pocket, but other than that, the Wellfleet position is open right now, and that's retirement, the Wellfleet Elementary. Other than that, everybody stays the same as we move forward.
Hopefully some opportunity for people to move up.
You never know, you know, certainly there's, you know.
It's part of the candidate pool anyway.
Yeah, you always do like to hire from within where you can, though. You know, you always like to
Absolutely.
nurture and build your leadership from within wherever possible.
And the last question I got is, with respect to the numbers you talked about, you know, losing to the charter school and to the new tech school, are we sure that this is just a blip because of the construction, or is this a trend? And the reason I ask that is there's a lot of students now that are looking at technical careers as opposed to going to traditional colleges because of a lot of reasons, not, you know, withstanding the costs, right? And the opportunities to work in the trades, et cetera. And with that fantastic new school, you know, could this be a permanent thinking on the part of the students as well?
So-
You know, I just asked that as a question.
So I know that Chair Easley will probably want to chime in on this too, but I would say it could be a glitch or it may not be. One of the many strengths of Nauset High School is its electives and its specialized programs that, quite frankly, you don't find anywhere else. Like, you don't. And that's one of the things that I said it, and it wasn't flippant when I said it earlier. When we looked at the high school for making the potential for making some cuts to staff, we looked hard to say, but we don't want to alter the programming, because we know that the programming at Nauset High School is really special, and we don't want to lose that. So yes, there are people that are going to be outgoing, you know, looking for technology, a different type of tech jobs. But I still believe in my heart that what we offer at Nauset is so unique and so special. I think you're going to see, I think that once our school is ready to go, I think you'll see us draw some kids back and or keep some kids there.
I think the electives are fantastic, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it attracts, students are different, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
The person that wants to go to the tech school necessarily isn't the kid who wants to go to UCLA. You know what
Exactly,
I mean?
yeah.
And we got to support both, as you know better than I do, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm just wondering, you know, plumbers are making $200,000 a year, that's an attractive career, you know what I mean? The kids weren't thinking about when I went to school, you know what I mean?
Agreed.
So, you know, and they don't come to school with all the burden and everything else, you know, that's a real fact of life for the kids now, as we all know.
Did you want to respond, Ms. Vaughn?
Well, yeah, I just don't mean, I think that part of what we're talking about is we're going to have to wait to see. I mean, I don't think there's any way of knowing. I think that the attraction of a new school, of a tech school, without a doubt, just in and of itself, without anything else going on, had its first part. I mean, you go into a brand new school, it's got state-of-the-art stuff. I mean, so that's the first part of it. Then you go beyond there, and without a doubt, I think, as you say, society changes are going to impact it all. I've got 2 kids starting to go to college next year. And believe me, I wish they'd go to, wish they had gone to tech and were going out into careers next year. But, you know, it's just the way it is. So, I mean, I don't doubt that, but I don't think there's any way really of knowing until we get through this.
Sure. I just think we ought to, and I'm sure you guys are,
Well,
look at the trend beyond just around here.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, across, not the county, the state, you know, in the region, because that may give us an indication to plan appropriately, and as you said, balance the right dollars so you get the right electives in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Art?
Yeah, thank you. Brooke, In November or October of 2021, the select board communicated to you the concern about the abrupt termination of the adult education program.
Right.
And after a couple back and forth on email, the information we got in the following February was that this was not a permanent elimination, but that was due to COVID, and that the fall of 2022, the program would be reinstituted. And we didn't see it in 2022.
Right. That's
We had
correct.
A number of our residents and citizens really interested in that program. So I'm wondering, when is that going to be reinstituted?
So thank you for bringing that question up, and thank you for writing the letter. I appreciated it when I got the letter, so thank you for that. I think in part was when we realized that we really didn't have the space at this point in time in that building. Although we've got lots of other plans for the modulars when the project is finished, but that modular unit would be perfect for that kind of program to move into it after. But I know that we've received all kinds of calls. I think lots of people have their eyes on the modulars when we're done with them. But I think right now we just don't have the space. I don't think it's that the interest is not there. I think the interest is there, but I think we did need to get out of COVID. And I think that we found, once we got into this year, that we really needed to get ourselves regrounded. And I'll tell you, that move into the modulars was no small move. That was enormous. That was absolutely enormous. So now we've got buildings that are offline, and so there's not a whole lot of space. If you're watching our committee meetings, for example, if you went to Nauset, you remember the high school library, for example. I don't know if you've seen pictures of it now, but it's now the cafeteria. Beautiful. When I walked into that room for the first time.
I thought this program was run at the middle school.
No, I thought it was being run out of the high school.
The Millnet was always at the middle school.
You know what? I honestly did not know that. I always thought it was high school. My apologies for that then. I will have to go back and take a look. I thought it was running out of the high school, so my apologies. And no one has corrected me before this, so thank you.
Mary.
Going back to the high school though, if you get a chance to go into that library now and see it, it's incredible. It's stunningly beautiful what they did with it once they got the shelves out and the tables in.
So not to beat a dead horse, but does that mean you will look at the program and the space?
It means I will go back tomorrow and do a fresh look.
Come to a decision as to whether you'll re-implement it, and if you're not going to re-implement it, will you please let us know?
I'd be more than happy to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie, do you have some
Oh,
members?
I have some members, I think, that had some questions too.
Oh, you just turned it off.
I know, because I was gonna move it, didn't want to make clunky noises. I had to move it because I had surgery on my neck, so I can't turn that sharp. No, I'm great. So, questions about school choice. You mentioned people coming and going. Do you have numbers, like how many are outgoing choice versus?
I have the figures from 2021.
Yeah, okay, I think I saw. It's roughly 200 though, right, that we get choice coming in? Yeah. So I'm curious why you don't show that income. Because I think people should see that choice money that we get. I know it's about 5,000 a student. That's $1 million.
Gio, where is the, can you just, never mind. Chair Easley has it.
It's in the revolving accounts, one of the revolving accounts, and the balance prior to us applying the $1 million to this year's, to offset the cost of the towns, is $654,932. That was as on the 28th of February.
That's your balance.
That was the balance in that account, correct,
Okay.
year to date, yep.
But I think it's important for people to see that number
We have talked-
that you bring in.
Talked about, we haven't used that well, so
Yeah.
in general, what happens with those funds, it goes to offset the town's expenses for the budget, for obvious budget. But we could specialize it for covering tech or whatever, it's more, at present, it's been an ease of accounting, just to bang it, and it's done. But I agree that there's a public relations point to it, that we should because when you put the general budget it's just there, you can put it specifically towards something and get the benefit from it, yes.
Yeah,
Part of
because
the
I think
$1
it's
million.
the part of the $1 million.
It is, I'm sorry, it is,
No,
it is
it's
part
not.
of the monies that were used to reduce, the $1 million comes from E&D, I apologize, that was my mistake. The $1 million comes from E&D. This is part of the revolving funds that are used, so I've got to make sure I get to your sheet.
That's what I'm basically saying, no?
Reduce, right, we use it to reduce the, yeah,
It's a part of the 8 million?
yes. I believe, actually, Giovanna, Giovanna's got her hand up, let her.
Yeah, let's answer this question.
That's a good piece of it. It's $1 million.
Thank you. If you look on page 3 of the region operating budget, we have the revolving accounts there. And if you look under the second one, school choice revolving, we're projecting to receive 182 students, and we use a blended rate of 5,500 because there's always a special education component there. And then, so that 182 students at $5,500 is $1,100,000. Plus, we're using the remaining balance that we have in school choice of $7,890, and that totals a $1,180,000. $1,008,890, and that reflects a decrease of $224,110 as compared to what we were using last year. As I mentioned earlier, we used to have robust balances especially in school choice, because those balances, they don't put these revolving accounts do not close out into E&D at the end of the year. They keep revolving. So we were fortunate to have robust balances over the years, and you can see the progression of what we've used in the past budgets out of school choice. But now, due to the declining students that are coming under school choice, that reflects a reduction in the revenue sources there.
So Giovanna, I think it would be safe to say, if you correct me if I'm wrong, school choice money goes into the separate revolving fund. It's not part of this district's operating budget, operating fund, but it will pay for
Correct.
costs that would otherwise have to be paid out of the operating fund. So,
It's somewhere in the operation.
Yes.
yes, but it doesn't show as a income source to the general fund. But if the
Correct.
fund didn't exist, the costs that it supports would have to be in the general fund.
Right, so previously, we did show the revolving accounts combined with the sources of revenue in the income section, but DESE and the Department of Revenue said to us, you cannot commingle. So that's why we started using a separate page to show the revolving accounts, what we're using to offset expenses, and these expenses are reduced in the region-only budget. So when you see the region-only budget, the supporting documentations that we provide, that's the full budget, and then when we go to pay expenses, we charge them directly to these accounts.
Okay,
And that's state law. The state requires the districts to put school choice receipts into the separate fund and spend directly out of that
sorry.
fund. And
We were just
So I
trying to find
think
it,
the-
though, in that,
the bottom line would be, the budget would be,
Page three, what she's referencing is not it. And you go to three.
Right, it's not there.
Page 3 of the region-only budget. So it is not part of the presentation that
Okay.
you've been-
Can I just sum up what I think the point is of the bringing this up, is that I think the point that we feel is being missed is how much school choice contributes to reducing the budget. And that it's not clearly laid out. I couldn't find it. I didn't have much time to look at this because it just showed up yesterday also, but I can't find it. And if I'm a member of the public, they definitely can't find it. And if I'm a member of the public that questions school choice, I'm never gonna find it. So it's one of those things that's almost worthy of its own page, to call it out,
yeah.
to say, this is what it
There are-
costs.
we always get questions
This is what
about
we made,
choice,
this
so
is how much it
it gets-
offset our budget.
Right.
Done, super easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so I
Thank
think,
you.
good, so Gio, I hope you're taking, well, I know you're always taking notes, so I hope that you heard that and you've taken the notes on that.
I can
think
repeat
That's a great idea. We'll
Oh,
send
now,
them to you.
duly noted, we'll update our slide presentation for the next
Yeah.
committees.
Yeah, the
Thank
simpler
you.
the better.
Orleans,
That's right.
get it into Orleans.
Yes,
There you go.
please.
We try to get better every time we do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just, I'm sorry, a quick note, so if you, since we're on that page 3 of the region-only budget, if you look at the bottom of that region-only budget, well, I'm sorry, there are some adjustments to those figures that are predominantly correct. Look at the very bottom, you go to operations, sped, transportation, and choice charter. Those are the drivers, I mean, out of all the presentation, so it's page 3, region-only budget. I'm not sure where it appears, I hate to say it again.
I have page 3 regional budget.
So you look at the very bottom of it, you've got operations.
Travel, food?
Yeah, I think this,
What we were just talking about, but I mean, that is where you will find the reasons, the logic for the increase in in our budgets. And it is the increase of 9%, roughly 9% in operations, the special ed cost increase at 8.3%, transportation costs up 13, and school choice charter up 18. You know what I'll do? I will email you tomorrow this page with it highlighted so that you have it to look at. Okay?
Yeah.
We don't have a question? Talking to the mic, Russ, speak into your.
I'm encouraged that you feel as the school building is coming to its end position, that the school choice program will get back to a similar or the same level as before. And it's, I think, very important. I think that point was made to put some documentation together. You have the documentation because I've gotten it from the school. And you were netting out $1.1 million a year in those years before COVID. And that is the reason that the school was attacked by the people of Brewster, because of the school choice program. And they took the information incorrectly and presented it incorrectly. And I think that it is extremely important that we get back to having that amount of school choice. But the documentation is in your office.
Yeah, last year on a Zoom call, I was sitting in Mary's seat, and I asked him, trying to look at school choice to try and, if you can send us we know how much comes in, if you can show us your analysis of how much it costs so that we can show people that it's a net plus. But I either lost what you sent or I haven't seen it, but if you could do that again for me, I would appreciate it.
Did you hear that, Jill? Jill, you're muted.
I think she's muted.
Okay, he's going to ask about school choice, and basically what he's looking for is showing the net value of school choice students and basically the cost that's anticipated that's associated with it and what's netted.
Right, yes, that's exactly, thank you.
If you look at the region-only budget, the school choice tuition going out, we approximated that based on the number of students that are going out this fiscal year. That equates to 61 students leaving the district, and that's $442,000.
No, I think we're good with the school choice now.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
We've got our answers. We're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
all right, I'm changing the subject because I got another question. Okay. You had mentioned in general information that the middle and high school are examining programs to look at enrollment about potentially cutting programs. Ooh. Whoa, no, my mic was off. Okay. And so, I went through the whole school system. I participated in a lot of programs and a lot of sports, so I'm a big advocate of all of it. But my question is that if you're questioning, reduction of programs, with students that don't have, with programs that don't have a lot of students that participate in them, I noticed that there's increases kind of across the board on athletic salaries, contracted athletic services, athletic supplies for both the high school and the middle school. And so, you know, I just question, you know, if I see programs that I think enrich students that I participated in a lot of, and I know that I was in groups that had 6 or maybe even a few less students that I truly benefited from. And then I see on the other end, these increases that are not, you know, not insignificant. I was just curious about the mindset there.
Sure. Well, actually, if I can speak to the athletics to begin with, and in part, this is also some guidance from the Massachusetts Association for Athletics. And what we're finding coming out of COVID, again, as I was talking about, we're still seeing a lot of students with self-regulation issues or behavioral issues, and we were finding that our coaches were really needing assistant coaches because the notion of just having one person anymore with the team was not, it's not a good way to continue right at this point in time. And so it was suggested that assistant coaches be added. This is not just in Nauset, this is right across the Commonwealth. And so a lot of our teams across the Commonwealth have now seen that particular increase. So there is a definite increase on that. In terms of some of the programming, I think what we were doing is more looking at saying, if this program, for example, if part of this program, maybe one teacher was teaching a program, but might have had some other time blocks where they were dealing with study halls or did this or that. We're saying, okay, wait, can somebody else pick up that particular program so we can keep the program, but we can make the reduction in these other areas. And so that's more along the lines that we're looking at. With one exception, we were looking at one program at the high school where we felt it probably could be picked up virtually. And again, small, six students across the entire high school. And we looked at that and said, okay, I think that we might look a little bit differently at that. So I would say that, like always, we look with the child first and foremost in every decision that we're making. But then we also have to be fiscally responsible with what we're doing and what does that look like. So I think we're trying to get the best bang for the buck we can as we work through this.
And just one more
That's
point.
helpful.
So
Thank you.
Out of COVID, kids and exercising in them outdoors, and they were used to being outdoors when they were in during COVID. So some weren't, but the object was to get on top of that. So some of the cost increase there is based on increase in just after-school programs, rec programs, rather than athletic team programs. I mean, we've increased the number of rec at the middle school, and we've increased the number of teams. We're trying to get a little more diversity in the teams that we have available. So that's some of the cost increase in the athletics part, and with the addition of the assistant coaches.
Other questions?
So I had also wondered a little bit about the salary for athletics, and it sounds like it was taken up by assistant coaches, but then we have the like justification part, and I guess the justification that you just gave us would have been nice to have in the actual. It doesn't, it just is general like, oh, this pays for staff, but it's a $23,000 increase, and I guess it would have been nice to have that justification of.
Totally agree with you, and
in there
if you can make
instead
a
of.
note, we can add that to the justification sheet as well, so thank you for bringing that up.
And then I guess I was also curious about salaries for the principals at Nauset Middle School is at $90,000, and then the justification line just says there's a full-time principal and 2 assistants.
And that's correct, and that's exactly correct, and that's because we've got the addition of that assistant principal that's now showing up. So that's.
Okay, so that's just the extra staff person?
That's just that,
Yeah, so I guess the justification
So we can
lines
make-
would be like,
So
why
just
is this different?
We have gone on, so this year we attempted to work on those justification lines that were not effective.
Yeah.
Next year, it is going to be a goal of the Budget and Finance Subcommittee to make sure that the justification lines will be very informative as far as what they are. I think what in the past would have happened, because it was just line representatives, when you went through, the justifications were really just a description of what that line was and not actually the dollar amount in that line.
Right.
So there's been some adjustment to them over the years, but there has not been the attention paid to them. It should be, as you say, so that that document actually communicates to you what's going on, and that has not happened.
And then I guess I'm also wondering, why cafe salaries, I think in the middle school and the high school are 0. Is that put into some other, is that a contracted service?
I'm sorry, what?
No, it's not contract.
It says cafe salaries, cafe other,
Oh,
0.
cafeteria.
Yeah, the cafeteria.
Because some of the cafeterias were picked up by the cafeteria revolving account, is that correct, Gio?
In the past, we used those line items to support any deficits in the cafeterias, but we haven't seen deficits in quite some time, quite the opposite. The cafeterias have been showing good balances, and that's through the excellent work of the food services director, Sue Murray, and also the free meals that have been provided. That has helped the cafeteria balances as well.
And I have 2 more questions. So one is, I was wondering when this was made available. I got it when I walked in, and I was just wondering if I could have gotten it.
Gio, I don't know when these were made available.
I believe yesterday.
I'll have to double check, but I think they were now on Monday. I'm not sure. I'll have to check with on.
Okay, well, I guess it would have been helpful for us to have had more time to review that in preparation of this meeting, so if we could have gotten it maybe.
I think all of us agree that going forward, in the
should
past, we have had a similar situation and not, and in
Right.
fact, one time we received the paperwork literally as we walked into this.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And I think all of us feel that in order to really do
A
the
thorough.
review that we need to do, I have not had any time to look at this myself. I got it today.
So duly noted, Gio, if you can make a note of that too. I'm sorry that you haven't felt that you haven't had enough time for that. My apologies on that. And we can do better. We will do better.
And then I guess my final question is like a,
Can I just address that?
Oh,
one?
yeah. Oh,
Just
sure.
so I apologize, but just so these budgets were finalized last Thursday night. So you could have, they should have probably gone out Friday.
Friday.
And actually, I'm not really, it would have been nice actually, normally when they're finalized, the numbers are collated and it's all one piece and it's a final document and it's marked final. And because of this year, because of various issues, that was not possible. But, I mean, so it really is only from Thursday to today that you have a final, that a budget has been final. You could have gotten other budget information. I mean, the development has been going on for months. But as far as having a budget that actually you're gonna have to address and talk about, really only occurred Thursday night was the date for it. I'm looking at this and I believe, and, you know, things were adjusted and whatever in there, the information went out on Tuesday, so early Tuesday morning, but as far as a package of information that was going to be discussed at tonight's meeting went out Tuesday morning. So we should work to maybe just get it out on that Friday.
On the Friday, yeah.
so I will save my second question. I have another question. So per the budget and this, I was wondering if the budget subcommittee is filmed in the same way that the regional committee is filmed.
Subcommittees are generally not filmed.
Oh, okay.
No, but
All
they,
right.
but they are public meetings.
They're public,
and
so
like I say,
people can go to them.
We've had a number of other Board of Selectmen members and FinCom members join us at those meetings.
Sure. And then I noticed there's an increased attention paid to mental health and mental health services, and considering students spend much of their time in the classroom, I was wondering if the attention to mental health has impacted the way that classes are taught or the workload that is given to students.
I don't know that I would be the best. Dr. Millen probably would be the better person to answer that, to respond to that, because she's really overseeing the work that's being done on that. My first wish would be yes. I would want to respond yes, and I wouldn't want to tell you wholeheartedly, but that's the superintendent's wish and desire.
There are the tools that they are implementing in the middle school predominantly, because that's where the behavioral challenges, but they're also moving into high school. Those tools are being implemented in the learning process throughout.
Regularly,
So that they, so the children are constantly reviewing. I mean, as far as just, is there behavior, is there something that needs to be addressed at this point in time?
Even as simple as signage, it's all up. I mean, the signage went up this summer, about care and respect and, like all that kind of thing. So we would hope that it becomes something that's just institutionalized, that's just part of the fabric of who we are.
I mean, the culture, so the issue, I mean, what COVID impacted the culture in our schools, the culture in our society, and as a result, also the culture in our schools. And we're attempting to try to reverse and try to get that culture back, because there was an empathy and a caring among students that was prevalent then that is not as prevalent now. And so that has been on every level, in every school has been the move and what we are trying to maintain, because the thought process is, at least on the school committee, is that if we lose, that's lost in the schools. If we lose it in the middle school, it's going to flow into the high school. Once you lose it in the system, you're done. I mean, to reverse that is going to be very difficult. And so that has been where the resources have been put and why the resources, the justification of those resources. That we think there's a time window when you've got to get that done now. Or we're going to pay the price for a long time. So.
Are there any other questions?
Jerry?
Yeah. We talked some about debt service, and I just want to look at that because that's a big hit that's going to be coming to our taxpayers. Part of the vote, the recent vote, I think there was about my numbers could be wrong, $6 million in a contingency in there, and there was also a discussion, I think, Chris, you mentioned it, that potentially selling the mobile classrooms when we're done with them might bring in $500,000. That's just a guess, but whatever. My point is that if you don't spend the $6 million and we get the $500,000, will the $6.5 million be used to drop the debt?
So, I mean, as I think Rich talked and also Giovanna talked about it, present what we're doing is borrowing $90 million this next set. There's I believe roughly $10 million that is not being borrowed. And that would only be done at the end, partly is because the MSBA will their reimbursement, they hold reimbursements at the end, so we're not going to get those funds right away. So we're going to have to do a short-term debt regardless at the end of the project to offset until the MSBA pays us off. So at that point in time, when everything kind of levels out, you'll know where you're at. I would hate to say it, but what feedback we're getting, I think it would be perfect if we get it done and paid for as designed, as with the money we currently have. I would love to think there's going to be excess money, but I don't think at the end of the day, what the OPM tells us is that there is not going to be excess money at the end of it, and we're going to have to work hard to keep our, keep the pencil sharpened and make sure we don't have a lot of cost overruns and don't have a lot of change orders in the project to make sure that we get it in at the budget that we have.
Right.
And that's including the contingency?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I think the thing, if there is money left over, you're going to use it to put the debt down.
Or it just wouldn't be assessed.
Right.
It
Well,
wouldn't be borrowed.
It wouldn't be borrowed,
No,
yes.
it's going to be borrowed.
It's going to be borrowed, so you got to pay down the debt.
They're not doing it like we're doing one.
Okay.
You got to pay down that. Okay, that brings me to one other you're going to hate me for this question, but one other point is, I looked at things and I think, my numbers could be wrong, if a change order is worth less than $10,000, it can be done somewhat in staff, and if it's more than $10,000, it has to be done by the board. My first job on trying to do things, change orders almost costing me my job, is I had to try and stop them all in order to not go over budget. Can we get, because I'm sure you're going to have it, can we get a monthly or quarterly piece of paper that shows, here's the change order, here's how much it cost, and who approved it? And if you do that, I'm being honest, if you do that and send that to me, I'll have it put in our budget packet, our meeting packets, so it'll be a public document. So I want to warn, but I would like to know, I would like to know what change orders are done, how much it costs or how much it saves, because you can have a change order that saves, and who authorized it.
So, so we're clear, the process for every change order, regardless of the dollar amount, is going to be exactly the same. So it's going to go through the same process and same procedure. The only thing that you were talking about, this $10,000 one, was just that if there's a situation that occurs on site, that a decision needs to be made, that's going to cost us more if work doesn't proceed,
Okay.
there's an individual, actually it's $25,000, has that ability to make that decision at that point in time, so that the work can continue, so there is an additional cost. But the process on that change order is still going to go through the same procedure, same thing, same view, same documentation, same everything going all down the line. We have been told by our OPM that there will be this list that you're talking about, that on an ongoing basis, that will be provided to us and updated on a regular basis. We talked about it at our last meeting, I have not seen it, but it is something that is coming now as construction kicks in. So it should be readily available to you.
And you'll get.
Jerry,
Hold on
Good.
a second.
I'm on the building committee, so when I get it, I promise you'll get it.
All right, thank you.
And I'm going to include, one of the things that I'm actually very impressed with is all of the daily sheets now that we're getting. It's amazing.
It is.
So I'm going to
Good.
put it in your select board packet, because not maybe all the detail, but the photos are great. Because if you're not there, at least you can see what
Right.
the progress is being made.
That's
Thank you,
great.
Jack.
It helps, and I think this is a lot of money for our taxpayers, and they just
It's a
want to
lot
do
of
it.
money.
And I have one other question that you have no control over, but I just have to say it and maybe you do something. I feel, looking at Truro sending their sixth graders on school choice rather than on the $18,000 or $1,000 stuff, and having what looks like, in counting the numbers, only one sixth grader staying in the Truro school. And therefore, I feel like we're being used. All the four towns are being used by Truro doing that. Is there some way, whenever you negotiate again, to try and stop that?
Well, that's one of my questions. When are those contracts up for renewal?
I believe we'll be starting to renegotiate them in the next couple of months.
Right. So next year is when it comes up, so for the,
It's not
I understand.
fiscal year '24, it's for fiscal year '25.
25.
But if you look at it, and I think there was an article in the Provincetown Independent at one point that showed that Truro kept only one or two students, try to keep one or two in sixth grade so they can send their sixth graders to Nauset
I think Desi
Middle.
would be the one that hammers them on that. I did hear at one point in time that they were joining the fifth and sixth graders and whatever. But that is a valuable point, and yes,
Yeah.
you know, as with everybody within elementary school around, in our four towns, everybody prides themselves on their elementary schools and their ability to take care of their kids. Truro was no different, and I understand the monetary aspect, I think part of it is also, they would love to believe they can keep their sixth graders in town. At one point in time, they had 8 going out and 7 in, the last time I was addressing the numbers, and they were heartbroken by the 8 going out. My kids went through that for a very small school, and you can't blame them to want to go to a larger school.
Right.
with a
I
couple
understand.
hundred kids, because it just changes their world. So, but I can, understanding our elementary schools, you can understand where they're coming from. I wasn't aware that those numbers were there. I mean, we will.
Yeah,
we'll
well,
address it.
the reason I asked it is that last year, there were 12 Truro students in sixth grade, so 12 choice students, 5,000 apiece. And this year, with seventh grade, so they've lost, you don't know all for school choice, they only have 13 in the middle school. So the 12 from the middle school stayed and one other came in. That just shows, I just feel used, and I think the taxpayers of Eastham, Wellfleet, Orleans and Brewster maybe are being used by this. And I think that we need to push hard on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, come on.
How much COVID money did you guys get in return? And how much is left?
So, I'm sorry, there's nothing left, to be clear. I mean, it has been all.
Expended, it's all expended.
So it's not that it's spent, but it has been assigned to, going to be spent for certain
Or
items.
encumbered.
And do you think when it goes, Is that gonna put any pressure on the operations budget beyond it?
Yes.
It's created some layers of permanency.
So I mean, we utilized COVID funding for part of what it was. I mean, we bought some technology with it, but we've in turn added support staff where necessary to offset the challenges that students are facing. So there will be adjustments that will be required in that process. And we are aware of it, and we have been looking at, how to address it and what's necessary.
I would say, though, as a follow-up to that, is we were really cautious as we spent the ESSER money with an eye to that very thing.
Thank you so much.
I have one other question. It has to do with OPEB. And I see on this that you have down $9,075 for OPEB. That doesn't sound like it's enough. Do you want to pay more? Your summary by account?
Mary, that's not the Nauset district, that's the portion from the Cape Cod Tech that is,
Oh, this is just Cape Cod Tech?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Our OPEB still gets $450,000. We invest $450,000 in it every year and a half since it was passed by. So I'm sorry, I don't have the dollar amount in front of me, but we're in $1.3 million, $1.2 million. So $2 million.
As far as the value.
The value, and the benefit to that is because we haven't gone out to borrow, but supposedly this was one of the logic, the reason we were pushing hard on it was that this is something that they look at when you go to borrow money, that you want to make sure you got your liabilities covered. So being above $1 million is a good thing because it means we've committed to it.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions from anybody up on the screen there?
We gotta move on, Mary.
Anybody else down here?
Maybe just one comment. I know folks try to brought this up about trying to get the material, but even if you guys give us an 80% budget, you need to look at as a draft. We look at drafts of the other departments. It would allow us to come a little bit. And I know how hard it is to put budgets together, believe me.
But isn't that the trouble is honestly, you put out an 80% budget, you get people talking about numbers that aren't real. I mean, we already have in the papers talk about a 9-point-some-odd budget that was something that was preliminary, and it got all sorts of newsprint. I mean, so it just gets difficult. They all are public documents. I mean, we
understand. Yeah, I'm just hoping though, before a week or two, in a week or two window, if you're that far out, you're doing all your budgeting in the last 2 weeks rather than over the 2 months you claim you're doing it.
We do try to give, like I said, our TAs and TMs at the beginning in the month of January, a placeholder notion so that they know kind of where we're at. But it's just as a placeholder.
It is something we'll take a look at. It was a big push last night, getting documents earlier.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. And might I also say too, thank you for not pushing us through this tonight and trying, forcing us through really quickly to get us in and out of here. And I appreciated the length of time that you spent. And so I'm very appreciative of that. And I thank you so much.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you.
Mary, we've got Erin Orcott, the school business administrator for Cape Cod Technical High School. She's on the Zoom call.
Okay, we're going to do the Cape Cod Tech before we do the elementary?
Yeah,
We're not.
They covered the elementary.
I'm sorry?
They covered on high level the elementary, and the school committee is voting that next Tuesday.
Okay. So we're on to Cape Cod Tech.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me in front of your committee tonight. I am presenting our budget on behalf of the superintendent. As I'm sure you can sympathize with 12 towns and multiple committees, we have to do a divide and conquer approach, otherwise neither of us would get to have supper with our families during budget season. So you get me today, but I am very pleased to be able to share our budget with you. I would like to present, would it be possible for the host to give me those privileges? Or if you have my presentation to please share it?
Yeah, it's working
He
on
said
it.
he's working on it. If you didn't hear him
just said
scream
it's
from the closet.
I'm working on it.
Everybody does have it in front of them though, Erin, so.
Okay. Well, if you'd like me to just wing it and start, I absolutely can. But it looks like I have the ability. Great. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes.
Well, I would like to start at the beginning though. So here we go. Again, I am here to present our FY24 operating budget for Cape Cod Regional Technical High School. This budget was developed between myself and the superintendent in consultation with our finance subcommittee. On that committee is our chairman, Tullio, Dr. Bloomfield, Dr. Michaud, and Mr. Galazzi. The starting of our budget is really revolves around enrollment. This is a snapshot of our enrollment by town. As you can see, students in FY24, our overall enrollment was 664 students. That is an increase of 11 students over last year. As you can see in your town, the increase is 4 students. We are up 4 students over previously we had 18. But you will see from a slide I will share next that 22 really is your number, your average number per year. This is just really demonstrating where our students come from. As you can easily see, the large orange and the blue represent our 2 largest sending communities, which are Barnstable and Yarmouth. But Eastham is contributes about 3.3% of our overall enrollment for tech. As you can see from this historical snapshot, our enrollment is at a high from where it had previously been. As shared in the previous presentation, in FY20 we did have a low of 570 students. As you can see, that has increased over time. We are at a high of 664 students. This is a very good number for us. The building was built at 85% capacity to serve 650 students. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room between 650 and 715, but we are very happy with our overall enrollment at this time. So the budget that I am presenting to you, and the line item budget that you have in front of you, is a 3.86% increase. That is an increase of $623,000 over our previous operating budget, for a total operating budget of $16,750,000. The historical chart on the right-hand side is demonstrating that I think we have been a very good steward of taxpayer dollars in Eastham and beyond. We've been able to keep the number relatively under 2% with the FY21 glitch but still under 3%. Unfortunately, with many cost drivers driving the cost of this budget, we are unfortunately coming in with a 3.86% increase. So where does the money come from? In FY24, assessments, that is local assessments from your towns, comprises roughly 74.5% of our overall revenue. State aid has risen significantly this year. It is now 21.5% of our operating budget, where it had been in the high teens up until this year. The Student Opportunity Act absolutely infused quite a bit of money, readjusting some costs to where they should be. Lastly, the third cost or revenue contributor to our budget is local revenue. That is revenue that's just derived essentially from 2 sources. One is our excess and deficiency fund, that's similar to your free cash, where we are devoting $600,000 in FY24 to offset assessments. Also, we're expecting upwards of $65,000 in local revenue, mostly derived from lease agreements that we have. We currently host the YMCA of Cape Cod rents a facility on our property, as well as Cape Destinations, our transportation company, also rents for us. This is a historical snapshot of our operating budget versus revenue sources. As you can see, the blue line represents our operating budget, and for the first time in many years, you'll see that the green line, the assessments, has decreased slightly with the state aid number increasing conversely. Again, this is the same information, just in a numerical format. As you can see, our budget increases have been relatively stable with really just this major infusion this year of state aid really being able to lower assessments. Even though we do have an increase overall in the budget, our assessments have effectively had a net decrease. So what is the money used for? As you can see, a majority of the funds in this budget are dedicated to salaries and benefits, as well as retiree costs. That leaves about 20% left to support the building and the operations itself, the insurances for the school, as well as the supplies, textbooks, and materials needed for student education. Again, this is the same information, just in a numerical demonstration. It is easy to see insurance benefits at 11.4% of our budget is a major cost driver. Retiree benefits, OPEB costs, plan operations, these are all significant cost drivers and have definitely affected the increase that you are seeing this year. This is our capital debt schedule. I am thrilled to be able to say we are in year 5 of a 20-year fixed principal declining in interest bond. Very aggressive, very favorable interest rate at 3.32%. We worked very closely with the town finance officials before bonding, and they really had encouraged us to go for this 20-year bond. And I am very grateful now, looking at the economic environment that we did that. We accelerated the payments and really came into a building project at a very favorable time. Eastham's debt assessment, your portion of that overall debt assessment for next year is $195,716. Again, that is just the debt, and that is based purely upon your 22 students of our overall 664. This is the overall assessment chart for capital and operating. As you can see, Eastham's operating assessment is $440,765 for a total assessment for FY24 of $636,481. I'm going to close my presentation, or the formal parts of my presentation, by sharing one of the things that I'm very proud of. Cape Cod Tech entered into the Plymouth County OPEB Trust in its early stages in 2015, adopting, being part of that program. We have had a very favorable experience in that program. We are in, I believe, year 6 of our 36-year funding schedule for our OPEB liability. I am very happy to report that right now we're about 2.3 million. We have gained a bit since the close of last fiscal year, and our net to funding ratio is about 13.38%. So again, it's a huge boulder to push up that mountain, but we little by little we're doing it each year, and I feel as though this is a great benefit for our district. Again, this is the end of my prepared remarks, but I'm very interested in whatever questions you might have for me.
That's a huge savings for them. They don't have to.
I have a question. This is Mary Shaw. I noticed that in your budget proposal, I'm looking to see what page it was, page one, yes, here it is. You have close to $300,000 listed for provision for contract negotiations. Could you discuss that with us, please?
Absolutely. We are currently in a negotiations year this year for FY24 for all of our units. Every unit we have teachers, aides, secretaries, food service, custodians, as well as our are non-union positions. So we are currently still in negotiations for that. So you will see in the salary line, it's almost a 0% increase. That is because that line 5 of the budget provision for contract negotiations is really kind of the bucket, the hold all for what we're expecting to negotiate with our various units.
And how would that compare to what you did pay last year, actual for last year?
I am not prepared to share that because we are still in contract negotiations with our units.
Okay.
I can say that it's very much in line with, I think, some of our neighboring districts. Negotiations are going very well, and this sum of money will, I think, exceed what's necessary.
Do you have solar panels on your building?
We do have solar panels. They're not fully commissioned because this is part of the building project where we have to wait until the building has been completely turned over to us, commissioned and signed off by the MSBA. So we do have solar panels. They are not operational at this time, but once we are able to take ownership, we will be utilizing them. We do have EV charging stations that we have in the parking lot that have been pretty beneficial, I think, for many folks in the community, as well as providing a very small revenue source for the district.
Are there some questions from anybody here at the moment? Anybody over there?
I have a comment. Do you have a question?
I do have a question. Transportation, can you, just looking at your line, it's about 800,000, I believe, this year for general or basic transportation. Can you explain how that works? It's been a while since my daughter was in school, and I kind of remember hearing about it. But you pick up from Provincetown down,
Yes.
don't you? Yeah.
We operate 11 buses for home to school transportation. So we have 11 buses going from Mashpee to Provincetown. Our ridership is very high. We are in year 4 of a 5-year contract, or FY24 will represent year 4 of a 5-year contract with Cape Destinations. They also provide our late sports and field trip transportation. The $800,000 number that you're seeing there, it is slightly low because of recent fuel escalation charges. We have a contract where if the fuel price increases, it can be charged back to us. That being said, I think we're thoroughly covered with our regional transportation reimbursement funds to be able to offset those expected excessive costs.
Oh, so you do get the regional reimbursement?
We do.
Oh, that's great.
Regional transportation reimbursement is somewhere typically between 85 and 90%. So we do discount what we expect to receive in the form of Chapter 71 funds, and we net that off of the total cost when we factor that into your assessments.
Awesome, thank you.
Jackie?
Erin, I don't mean to be a super fan, but I am. And I think you and Bob, like over the course of the past 7 years since I've been here in Eastham, have done such a steady, fabulous job at delivering fantastic services to our kids at such a good cost. And, you know, we're all fans because we know how hard this budgeting process is, and you've managed to knock it out of the park every time. So thank you. On behalf of our residents, thank you so much for being so good at what you do.
Thank you. That your words are amazing and very kind. Thank you. And we very much enjoy working with all our towns, but I have to say our Lower Cape town is definitely my favorite.
Aaron, it's Rich. Might not necessarily be a fair question to you, but at least how it pertains to the tech. Is the reason, for example, that Chapter 70 for the tech is a substantial increase this year, but not so much substantial for the Nauset district, just relative to the values of the 11 towns you've got Cape-wide versus the 4 towns here? Or because I know the per pupil charge also went up, but the Nauset district doesn't experience that increase the way the tech does.
So, Rich, just to clarify, you want me to speak on the increase in the state student aid?
Chapter 70, yeah.
Chapter 70. So there's a few factors that really have contributed into the adjustment of Chapter 70 state aid that have kind of brought that calculation a little bit more into reality out of the 80s into maybe the 2000s. Some of those factors that they considered was the increased cost of vocational education. So right there, that's a huge check. Another is low-income students. We have a very high population of low-income students. Get me on a soapbox about free lunch and I'll be here for the rest of the night. And the third would be special needs students, which we also have a fairly large population of. So those three things were, you could call them kickers in the formula, as well as an adjustment, a so-called adjustment for employee fringe benefit costs.
So basically, the values of the foundation budget elements are increased. And you have the,
in our favor.
in the categories that you're having, those tend to be the ones that went up the most.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Aaron, I have another question. It's my understanding that because the Cape Tech got favorable interest rates for the funding of the construction, that the towns received rebates. And I'm wondering what the rebate was for Eastham and how it was accounted for.
If you could give me a few minutes, I could pull that data. I can quickly tell you that we returned about $1.8 million last year to taxpayers on a enrollment pro rata share. The major reason for that was because when we bonded for the school, my former treasurer, Paul Funk, had the insight to, I guess, aggressively invest those, or not aggressively. It was a great interest rate at the time on bonds, and we essentially gained $1.8 million in interest revenue for the project, which unfortunately we didn't get to keep and put back towards the project, but fortunately we were able to return that back to your towns in the form of an offset to the FY23 operating assessment.
I was wondering how it was accounted for.
I believe it's,
Purely enrollment.
I think it was roughly about 40 some odd $1,000 that we had reduction in assessment.
I don't know, the article that I saw had Harwich getting 183,000.
Yeah, but they have more kids.
They have more kids,
Yeah, it was purely, the state had us calculated on the FY23 enrollment.
We were low, that was, Mary?
Jerry?
Yeah, just one question, looking at student enrollment trend, what fiscal year did the new school open as I look at these?
The new school opened, I believe, in 2021. COVID has made everything worse.
Yeah.
The new school opened the late September, the year of COVID. So we essentially entered the building in a maybe a 50% enrollment scenario. And then by the turn of that calendar year, we were back to full enrollment.
Okay. So looking at your enrollment trend, the big jump is from fiscal 20 to fiscal 21, and in fiscal 21 is when the new school started to open. That's all, thanks.
22, Jerry.
To be 22 when it opened?
July 1, 21 would be the beginning of 22.
Okay.
And Aaron's correct, my son was a senior when the school opened. So the only reason I can remember that.
That's fine.
Any other questions from anybody on Zoom or at the table here?
Question. So, it's not financial, but the tech is now turning away students, am I correct?
Turning away students is not the way we would like to term it.
We're being selective.
We have a certain number of seats, enrollment that we can take. This year, we saw the most applications we've ever seen. over 400 applications for roughly 200 seats. We've never been in this, we've never had the, I would say, the luxury or fortune or misfortune of this happening. I want to reassure you that our enrollment and our acceptance is purely, it's blind admissions based. Your grades, your attendance, your performance in 7th and 8th grade, as well as a recommendation and an interview are what goes into consideration for your acceptance into tech. So yes, we have the misfortune of not being able to accept 100% of the students who apply to our school.
Follow-up would be, you mentioned, I think that you're at 85% capacity. So would you consider going to 90 or admit more of those students?
When I said we sent out 200 acceptance letters, that's in the hopes that maybe not all 200 come, because really 175 to 180 is a more manageable number. It's not that our building can't take that, it's constraints of individual programs. There are certain programs that have regulations that are set by the state as far as student-to-teacher ratios. Specifically plumbing has a very strict 8-to-1 ratio. Then you get into the specific programs, programming on the academic sides, what our students need. It's really a fine puzzle piece of how many students we can fit into the building and where. So it's a tricky question, and we need to make sure they're balanced throughout the grade levels.
Thank you.
Can I ask you? It's not about the budget. You mentioned the admissions process, and I was wondering how much the personal interview and recommendation is weighted versus somebody's grades and numbers on paper.
To be honest, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that off the top of my head. I don't have the rubric for the scoring in front of me.
Okay.
If it's information that I can provide to you in the future, I can certainly have our admissions counselor reach out with that information. Because sitting in front of you in my position, I don't know that off the top of my head.
That's okay.
Is the acceptance rate based in any way on the towns themselves, or is it based strictly on the student, the individual?
Strictly on the individual itself. There are no caps or quotas for any of our towns. It's strictly based upon the student itself.
Tom, do you know?
Yeah, just following up on the question about the acceptance rate. You said you had 200 out of the 400 you took. Is this a trend you've been seeing over the last few years relative to the applicants in the freshman year, or did it spike or jump up, step function when you opened the new school?
It is certainly increased over the past few years. I would say this is a high that we haven't encountered, nor did we expect. And if you asked me why, I would certainly say that this beautiful building has something to do with it. The education that these kids are receiving is top notch, but I have to compliment, I guess, our nation's appreciation, newfound appreciation, revival of technical education, and what that can do for our students, that college is not for everyone, and having an occupation with a livable wage is an attractive thing for some of our families. So I think it is a combination of what we are able to deliver and what our families and our students are looking for.
Great, thank you. Well said.
Anything else? We'll go on to, does anybody have any old business at the moment?
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Oh, yeah, so the select board, we're just going to adjourn.
That's the old business?
This is your agenda.
We're out of here.
We have other old business.
Did you want to make any comments?
Do you need a motion for us to adjourn?
Town administrator report.
I have no comments.
No comments, okay. And I'm going to pass it as far as the new business is concerned. Our next meeting is Monday, this coming Monday. It's a joint meeting, March 20th at Town Hall. It's going to be on budget and a number of other items.
So I just wanted to let you know, we're doing the agenda now and it'll be out, but the budget hearing is actually going to be the second appointment on the agenda. So we're going to do the master plan first
Okay.
and then do the budget hearing.
Okay.
So, but I'll let you know if that changes and I'll send it out to you
Is
guys.
there also something regarding the Council on Aging? Is there?
It's just a very simple, the Council on Aging Board Chair just wanted to release the report to the Board of Selectmen. That's it. The UMass will be coming back in 2 weeks, I think on the April 3rd or April 4th, I can't remember, April 3rd meeting for a full presentation by UMass.
So that'll be at another
Yeah, so
day.
this is a 5-minute, we received the
Oh, okay,
report,
okay.
this is
I
it.
didn't know what it was going to consist of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mary, do we still have a meeting on Wednesday night as well?
Yes, we do. So our next meeting is next Monday. It's March 20th. It's a joint meeting with the Select Board, as we've just discussed. We will also have a regular meeting 2 days later on the 22nd. For us, that's 5 o'clock at Town Hall.
Which of those meetings will we discuss the implications of these numbers?
So in the
The numbers we got.
Yeah, so the budget hearing, on Monday will have a complete draft of the various financial articles, so Article 2, which is the operating budgets, Article 3, which is the capital plan and budgets, and Article 4, which is other budget items. And so we'll discuss that Monday, and then you'll have your opportunity on Wednesday for further discussion on kind of like an overview of where we stand with all this.